Good afternoon, everybody. I see we've still got a few people working to get in the room, but we will go ahead and get started. I have the pleasure of introducing today's last session, and I think kind of wrapping up the what's been a great event for me so far. In addition to the two sessions I've moderated, I've been an attendee yesterday and today. As a preventionist in the state of Ohio, I just want to say thanks, Prevention First, for a great event. But I will go ahead and introduce our speaker for this event. Mike Belcourt is a 2001 graduate of the University of Cincinnati with a BS in education. Mike has served for the last 8.5 years as the manager of AAA driving school in the Cincinnati and Miami Valley markets. Mike oversees a Class D training school, adult remedial program, and online Class D training school, for which he was instrumental in getting AAA's How to Drive Online program approved and launched in the state of Ohio. Mike is both a certified instructor and training manager in the state of Ohio. He was recently asked to help the State Driver Training Office train all their new training managers. Mike is also certified to train and teach AAA's Driver Improvement Program and RoadWise Driver Program. What he enjoys most about his role is working with novice and experienced drivers to educate them to make Ohio's roads safer for everyone. I will also go over a couple of housekeeping notes here. As you've probably heard throughout the event, continuing education will only be awarded for those who view the live session. You must attend the entire training to receive continuing education hours. Post-event evaluation surveys are required to receive continuing education. For nursing, social work, and mental health counselor credits, you must provide your license number in the post-event evaluation survey. For CHES credits, you must provide your CHES ID in the post-event evaluation survey. And you can expect to receive your certificate for continuing education by mail within 30 days of this training. You can interact with the presentation through the chat box if you have any questions. You must be attending as yourself in order to receive a certificate of attendance. You must have registered as yourself. And in order to ethically provide CEUs, they will use software that generates join and leave time reports. And you must have a join and leave time for each attendee. So you cannot share logins or have multiple people around one computer. The CEUs are based on the total amount of time accumulated between the time you join and the time you log off. Because we are ethically bound to report accumulated time, the accumulated amount of time a participant virtually attended, we cannot issue CEUs to individuals sharing a monitor or a computer or login, individuals attending less than 30 minutes of a 30-minute webinar. I'm sorry, or in this case, individuals attending less than 45 minutes of a 45-minute webinar, or individuals joining by audio only or phone only. All that said, I will be back at the end to provide a link and a QR code to the post-event evaluation survey. And at this time, I will go ahead and hand it over to Mike.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here presenting on what I think is a very important topic. So if we can go ahead and go to the next, there we go. Today we're going to be talking about alcohol and marijuana as you combine them both and what risks they provide behind the wheel. The next slide will go into our agenda a little bit and looking at the three big points that I want to talk about. First is where we are currently with the OVI in Ohio. So OVI, operating a vehicle while impaired. Now, a lot of people, I get a lot of questions asking, what's the difference between OVI, DUI, all of that. Just OVI is the term that Ohio went to because it takes driving under the influence out of it. Doesn't necessarily need to be driving. Operating a vehicle can be riding a bike. I've heard stories of people driving or riding a riding lawnmower and getting a OVI. So it's operating a vehicle and then changing that I from intoxicated to impaired, because as we all know, over the past few years, especially, we have seen a greater uptick in impaired driving or drugged driving. So no longer with intoxicated are we looking at alcohol. We are looking at both the impaired and driving. Then we're going to take a look, after we kind of set the stage where we are, we're going to take a look at how alcohol and marijuana look together. AAA's Foundation did a study with that. And then at the end, we are going to talk a little bit about the pandemic that we're going into and what the impaired driving issues look like during the current pandemic. So the slide you just see popped up, take a look at OVIs in Ohio since 2016. So pretty much looking at the past 5 years, you're looking over 72,000 crashes, OVI crashes in the state of Ohio, of which 61% of those are ages 21 to 39. Of those crashes, almost 2,400 fatal. So this is a pretty big deal. And it makes up 42% of Ohio's fatal crashes. So almost 50% of the crashes in Ohio that are fatal are OVI related. So it is important. But the big one I like to point out on this slide is the big times, Friday through Sunday, 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. We all know people like to go out and have a good time on the weekends. That's when the heavy drinking, drug use is done. Nighttime crashes, 41%. 41% of the crashes are at nighttime. Now, I do want to pause here and say this is much more a 24-hour issue now than it has been. In the past, when I was growing up and everything, if you wanted to stay away from the quote unquote drunk drivers, you didn't go out at the 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. You knew that's when the roads were going to have possibly the intoxicated driver out there. Now with drug driving becoming a bigger problem in the area, in Ohio and the surrounding area, we're seeing a lot more what we call the heroin hour, like the 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., where these are the people that are waking up in the morning and needing their fix. And so impaired driving it's no longer just a nighttime issue, even though we still see about 40% of the crashes happen at the nighttime. Then OVI arrests, 125,000 in the past 5 years. The shocking number here is 31% of those people are repeat offenders. OVI is one we see repeat, and we need to find a way to stop that. So we can go ahead and click on to the next slide. Okay, so according to government data, alcohol and marijuana are the most widely used drugs. I probably could have asked that as a poll question, and most of you probably would have said alcohol and marijuana being the widely used. The surprising thing to me is the age 12 or older reported drinking alcohol in the past month. 139 million people, 12 and older, and 43.5 million reported using marijuana in the past year. We are seeing that tick up, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. We are seeing that tick up a little bit with the legalization of marijuana going on throughout the U.S. So, next slide, please. So, what we're really here to talk about, marijuana and alcohol together. We all know the dangers of driving while intoxicated after we've had a few drinks. We have been taught since we were young, kindergarten, first, second grade, about the dangers of drinking and driving. Now you throw into it the marijuana and driving. And this slide, I mean, a lot of good data on this slide, but first of all, this was AAA Foundation's annual Traffic Safety Culture Index. They do a study every year. And looking at this, of the respondents, 1,000 people use alcohol only. 14% of those people have gotten a DUI with alcohol, 4% with prescription drugs, 12% have ridden with the intoxicated driver, and then 25% drowsy driving, have been in a car drowsy driving. Marijuana use, that number is way lower, 103 respondents, which again we would expect. The DUI number though for marijuana, of those 103, 37% have gotten a DUI for marijuana, for an OVI in Ohio. DUI is what AAA Foundation is still using. 14% in prescription drugs, 13% riding with an intoxicated driver, and then a little lower on the drowsy driving. But you can see just the percentage differences between alcohol use only and marijuana use only. But then you jump to, if you put them both together, what is that effect they have on driving when they're together, that synergistic effect that goes into place? 137 respondents said they've done both. And then immediately jumps out at me, 39% of those people have gotten a DUI in alcohol. So it's more than double those that just use alcohol. DUI marijuana, 52%. Prescription drugs, 25%. So you can see every percentage is higher than the alcohol only or the marijuana only. Couple of reasons why. The biggest reason for this is alcohol, we know through studies and everything, the first thing affected by alcohol is your judgment. So you're already using alcohol and you're throwing another drug in on top of it, that's going to impair your judgment even more. So we all have known those people, talked to those people. I teach, like was said, we teach the remedial class, which we get a lot of people that have been in for drunk driving. And they all think they're okay. You know, they've had a few to drink, all I feel fine. Their judgment's impaired, they get behind the wheel, they end up with that OVI. Well, now you throw on another drug that is another depressant in its own right, and you're impairing that judgment even more. And you're combining, you know, one beer and one joint is almost like a 6-pack. So where your mind tells you, I feel okay, I've only had one beer, you're impaired to the point of having a few beers because you did, however you chose to use the marijuana. Smoke being the most popular in this case, leads to worse judgment down the road. So let's go on to the next slide, because this is where I really want to spend a lot of the time, a few minutes, is we see a lot of people who use both alcohol and marijuana taking more risks. So not only are they impaired, but they're significantly more likely to speed, to text while they're driving, to intentionally run red lights, to drive aggressively. Again, I touched on it before. You're looking at judgment being impaired, but then you get into what else does the drug impair? It impairs muscle control, dexterity, perception. You know, intentionally running red lights, that could be a couple of things, right? They see the light turns red, but their perception and their reaction time is slower, so they can't react in time to run it or to stop for it, so they intentionally run it. They don't see what's wrong. People impaired with both alcohol and marijuana don't see the wrong in picking up that phone and texting. And not only do they text, but the texting takes longer. So what may be a 10-second, 5-second look down for somebody that's not impaired turns into maybe a 15 to 20-second look down for somebody that is. Now that car is traveling so much farther. And we'll get into a little bit of distracted driving at the end of the presentation, but the average text, if you're only going 35, 40 miles per hour, you're going to travel at least the length of a football field, if not 2. So think about that and just the amount of time it would take you to travel the length of a football field. If they're looking down, struggling because they're impaired at their phone, how much their eyes are off the road. And the speed, again, is a judgment thing, not paying attention. We find a lot on the intoxicated, impaired driving. They become so focused on the task at hand, their eyes on the road. They're deliberately watching the road. They're not paying attention to other things in the car. And I do like to point out too, when I say speed, they are more likely to go fast, but you see it in reverse too, where they get on the highway and speed limits are 65, 70 miles per hour, yet someone who's impaired is going 35. And they're going way below the speed limit in their mind, thinking, well, if I go slow, I'm not going to be caught. Little do they know, going slow, they're sticking out more than they would if they go faster. The next slide goes into some more of these risky behaviors. Speeding on residential streets with both 55%, alcohol only 35%. Aggressive driving 52% admitted to doing aggressive driving when on both, where only 28% is alcohol only. Back into the red light running and the texting and driving, again, you can see the compound factor of the drug. And we talk a lot, especially with our older drivers, our senior drivers, about synergistic effect in taking drugs, especially the prescription drugs and how they interact with each other and what they could do to affect you. And I did just see, and I'll pause here. Can you describe what aggressive driving looks like? Sure. So when I'm talking aggressive driving in my classes with the novices or even in my remedial class, what I'm looking for there is excessive speed is definitely a sign. Weaving in and out of traffic, squeezing into spots that maybe aren't big enough and they make the car behind them, alongside them, move out of their way. Tailgating is a form of aggressive driving. Those people that get horn happy, so laying on the horn, tailgating. The other thing is brake checking, slowing down. All of those are the kind of things I'm looking for when I'm looking for teaching, when I'm out in the car teaching a teen how to drive, that I'm pointing out as far as aggressive driving. But the big ones is what we tell people is, if you make somebody adjust their speed or adjust their position on the road because of an action you did, you more or less cut that person off, or could be aggressively driving. Aggressive driving could be because of a few things, and this is where the alcohol and marijuana attitude plays a lot into aggressive driving, agitation, lack of judgment, so just driving fast to get there. So hopefully that helps give you a little bit bigger picture of what aggressive driving is. Some other things that kind of stick out: flashing lights. You know, you're on the highway, person comes, they're way behind you and they're already flashing your lights because you're going too slow and you need to get out of their way. And they get right up on you before you even have a chance to move. Things like that is what we're talking about when we talk aggressive, overly aggressive driving. What does the drugs do? Again, impairs your judgment, impairs your muscle control. And the thing is, impaired driving, a lot of this stuff looks the same. Like if I ask all of you, what does it look, if you think someone's drunk, what does it look like? What do you look like to see if somebody's drunk? Well, you look at their speed. You look at weaving, not being able to maintain. Variations in speed, speed up, speed up, speed up, slow down, slow down, slow down. We all know that's maybe slow to react at red lights or green lights. we all know that kind of that picture that the impaired driver, aggressive driving can look similar. Same thing, texting and driving can look similar. You're looking for the same things, the weaving, the speeding up, slowing down when they're looking at the phone. So it all looks the same. So that's why you throw these drugs on it, alcohol first, and you start seeing these numbers creep up because now their judgment's gone and now their coordination, their willingness to listen, even if they have somebody driving with them or with them, that's all impaired. So it impairs the driving. Let's go on to the next slide because I get asked a lot of what do we do? What can we say? And this, what can we do to help this? And the big one now is marijuana. With the legalization going on across the states, and this map kind of shows you what states are legalized for both recreational and medicinal, what states are medical only like Ohio, or the gray states are not legal at all. And as we see the legalization of marijuana come, it brings up a lot of questions about OVI and, you know, how is it enforced? You know, if I asked all of you, how do we enforce driving under the influence of alcohol, or what's the legal limit? Probably almost everybody in this room would say it's 0.08, blood alcohol concentration of 0.08. So there's a number out there that's used by law enforcement and everything to define when somebody's impaired by alcohol. The issue we have with marijuana is that number's not out there per se. Now you'll see down here, states with marijuana per se blood limits. And basically this looks at the nanograms of THC in a milliliter of blood. Ohio, you'll see, has a 2 nanogram per milliliter per se blood limit. So they're trying, and I'm happy Ohio's one of those that is out there that has a number that says, but the problem is, you know, with marijuana, you know, alcohol, we know about 12, if you've had a big night drinking, about 12 hours, 13 hours later, you're back down to 0 blood alcohol content. With marijuana, we know that can linger longer. So where is that intoxication line? And it becomes very hard for law enforcement to make that call. Now, very interesting, and I've had them come speak to my instructors, the drug recognition experts that are out there for the police departments. Ohio has a few, are great. They are trained, they go through massive trainings to learn how to pinpoint impaired driving, drug driving. They have to be able to get it down to the scheduled drug they're on and type of drug and stuff like that. And they do it all through questioning and some field sobriety tests and different things like that. But there's a lot in the arsenal, but the biggest thing that's out there is the per se limits and getting more states as we get legalizing, getting more states to put these per se limits in place. So there's something out there to help define what it means to be impaired by marijuana. Let's go on to the next one. And now let's talk, everybody knows COVID-19. We've been in this pandemic since March of 2020 when the roads shut down and the world stopped for a few months. And just like to point out, the OVI related crashes, in 2020, we had 13,000 OVI crashes that resulted in 685 deaths in Ohio. Compared to 2019, that's about 100 more crashes and almost 100 more deaths. When I first saw these numbers, it blew me away because we knew there were less people on the road. So you would expect the crash numbers and all of that to go down, where in fact, what you kind of see is they went up, especially in OVI. What exactly plays into this, nobody knows for sure. But you can look at the use of alcohol maybe went up during the pandemic as people were home more, not driving as much, plus dealing with the results of the pandemic and what that was doing to them, both mentally, physically, socially, and all of that. But it also, people were impaired or not, people were taking more risks on the road. You know, we all probably saw on our Facebook feed, I know I did, people posting when the world started opening back up, when Ohio started opening back up about, oh my gosh, the traffic's got so bad. You know, I was getting so used to being able to go 15, 20 miles per hour over the speed limit because there were no traffic. Drivers were taking more risks out on the road. So if you're smoking marijuana, drinking alcohol, and you're looking at being out on the road, your judgment's already impaired. We know by the previous slides, they're more at risk. They're doing those risky behaviors leads to them taking more risks on the road and the numbers looking higher and everything. Obviously, don't have the 2021 numbers yet. I'll be very interested since we're not back to normal yet, but we're opened up even more and more people are on the road to see what those numbers do in the coming year. Let's go on to the next slide. Want to shift gears real quick and talk about distracted driving. Impaired driving is a big issue on the road. The other big one out there is distracted driving. In the Ohio House, there's House Bill 223, which was introduced to make distracted driving a primary offense in Ohio. For those of you that don't know the difference between the offenses, there are primary offenses and there are secondary offenses. Primary offenses are those that the police officer can pull you over for. They are the primary reason the police officer is pulling you over. Secondary offenses are those offenses that they can ticket you for, but they can't initiate the traffic stop on. So an example of a secondary offense in Ohio is your seatbelt for those over 18. That's a secondary offense for the passenger, backseat passengers, side passenger, all of that's secondary. It's not something they can pull you over for, but if you're not wearing your seatbelt when they pull you over, they can definitely give you a ticket for it. They changed the original distracted driving law in Ohio was anybody under 18, it was a primary offense. Everybody over 18, it was a secondary offense. Problem with that was the primary people that text and drive are your middle-aged 2021 to about 40 to 45. The people that are just entering the workforce that are trying to multitask while they're in the car are your ones that are on the primary offenders of that. Everybody likes to think that it's the teens, but it's not. It's people around my own age and that age group. The teens, I take it like seatbelts and everything. It's beat into their head. Texting and driving. My youngest daughter's 13. She's done texting and driving stuff in school already, nowhere near driving age. So they're getting educated on it, which helps. Education starts everything. It also says, it defines electronic wireless communication devices as not only cell phones, but tablets, laptops, and other devices. So it's not just cell phones anymore, it's the tablets, everything like that. It also extends texting bans to ban all non-navigational viewing. So no TikToking, no Snapchatting, no tweeting, no taking photos, no looking at images. All of that is put against the texting ban, which again makes it easier to enforce for the police officers because they're now no longer, are they texting or are they making a phone call or are they using Snapchat? It's all in there now. It also protects construction zone workers while imposing twice the amount imposed for a violation committed in a construction zone, but it also addresses the concern of traffic fines in that in lieu of the $100 50 fine for the first offense, You can take a distracted driving safety course through the Department of Public Safety. It is online, and that lowers your fee for your first time offense. So it also says, look, we know we're going to be cracking down on this, but we're going to give you a way that you don't have to pay the fine for your first offense by going through this driver safety. Distracted driving, cell phones, we've all seen it. We've all seen the stop at a red light, everybody's head goes down, they're looking at the phone, driving 65 miles per hour on the highway, and somebody's holding their phone up by the steering wheel. So it's something to keep in mind. And at AAA, over the past couple of years, we have started a campaign called "Don't Drive Intoxicated, Don't Drive Intoxicated." So if we go to the next slide, please. This is just a PSA we put out for the Don't Drive Intoxicated. So go ahead and hit play if you will. Oh.
Yeah, James, we don't hear it. So I think on your ends, on the PowerPoint, you have to hit the microphone option. I think it's on the PowerPoint application, maybe. Maybe try that one more time.
Great game. Yes. Hey, you can drive.
There we go. We can hear it.
Song got it right, sir. Good call. Hey, see you Thursday. Anybody?
We know it's never okay to drink and drive. Now we need to remember that it's never okay to text and drive. Studies have shown you are distracted for up to 27 seconds after using your phone. Don't drive intoxicated. Don't drive intoxicated. A sobering message from AAA.
So I know my presentation was mostly about alcohol and marijuana, and they're together, and the effects they have on driving, but kind of wrapping up with this "Don't Drive Intoxicated," and the important stat in there that nobody realizes that AAA did a big study, and it was found 26 seconds from the time you put the phone down to you're still distracted. So like you see in the video, the guy's going around the turn, his eyes are on the road, but because he was texting, the light went green, he put it down, he didn't pay any attention to the kids that were about to cross the street, and didn't even think when he put it down to look before he went. It was, oh, the light's green, I gotta go. And so as we get into the Don't Drive Intoxicated, a lot of us know not to drive intoxicated, right? We know if we're going out for the night, if we're going to a ball game, to a concert, have a designated driver. We know what the limit is. We don't want to push it. We want to get home safely. We call Uber. We Uber to the places we're going. We need to get that same attitude when it comes to texting and driving, and knowing, you know, if you're using your phone for music, for GPS, something like that, set it and forget it. Don't let that take control of your driving. And that'll go a long way. I like to say set it and forget it. No need. And just one more thing is what I relate this back to alcohol. We know that alcohol and drugs affects your judgment first. When you're driving and you're driving, you are using the part of your brain that breaks down willpower. So as you drive longer, your willpower gets lower. So you may get in your car and say, I'm not going to text and drive. You go for a long drive and you find yourself texting and driving because your willpower has been beat down. So you got to make a conscious effort to put that phone down and keep it away. So that pretty much wraps, leaves us about 10 minutes for questions and answers, and to dig into the topic a little bit if you would like to. So I will open it up if there are any.
I guess, Mike, I have a question on my end. So when they are tracking OVIs for marijuana consumption, how are they testing for that?
So usually that's because the per se is in blood limits. They're doing the blood test to check that. That's where the drug recognition experts come in too. Now, if somebody pulls over, let's say a police officer pulls somebody over for impaired driving, and they don't have the telltale signs of alcohol, the smell and all of that we all know, they will get these drug recognitions experts in, and they actually do a lot of it too. And then they'll use, like I said, they use the breathalyzer for alcohol. They'll use the blood test for marijuana, and it's that's usually how they're doing it if there's a suspected marijuana with it. And again, a lot of the time too it is for, you know, they open the windows and they can smell it right away. So, but as we get into the per se limits, it's blood limits that they're using for measuring.
Thank you. And then Carrie, I have your hand raised, so I will get to you in a second. But I do have one quick question from an, unless Carrie did not have a question. So is there anything we can do as citizens when we smell marijuana coming from a car?
It's very easy, and people don't like to do it, but and you see it a lot now, if you see something, say something. I have spoken to a lot of cops. I do a lot of training with police officers and stuff like that. And a lot of times people ask them, you know, you read all the time, call 911, call the police if you suspect somebody of impaired driving. That's the advice I give. If you see something, smell something, something seems out of sorts with the driver, call. That police officers would tell you they'd rather answer a call and have it be nothing with an impaired driver than not get the call and have it end up as a statistic like I showed at the first, at the beginning. So by all means, call. We tell the teens, because it's easy, call 911. If you're expecting to call 911 and the dispatcher will put you through to who will take the information they need. I do not recommend, with that said, recommend confronting the person. We know they're impaired. You don't want to be involved in that. And to the point that was just brought up, definitely we don't want to get into the profiling side of this. But again, safer than sorry. I mean, if you're smelling it, is the smell enough to make a call? Maybe not, but if they're getting behind the wheel, it's a tough gray line to walk. But if you see, I still support that. If you see something, if you're concerned, say something.
Yeah, thank you. And I know you can do like an anonymous tip line, that type of thing, you know, if you don't want to share your information or, you know, that type of thing.
I did see in the chat too, is this workshop available for college classes? I will do this all over. I do all sorts of talks, different age groups, different anything. You can, I can share my information. You can get a hold of our public and government affairs people, any AAA location, you can go in there and they'll put you in touch with the right people to do something like this, or a little more in depth through our public and government affairs as well.
And then I think there was another question before that. What are your thoughts on having a phone call while driving, such as over a car's Bluetooth? Is that an issue? Are there any, is there legislation about that being distracted driving?
I have not seen anything about that in Ohio legislation. I know there are some states that have it. I will tell you, it is not, just because it's hands-free doesn't mean it's risk-free. Your brain and everything is still engaged in that conversation with the phone. And a lot of times I'll get the argument of, well, what's the difference between having a passenger in and talking to the passenger and talking to that person on the Bluetooth? First of all, we all know technology is not great. Trying to make a phone call sometimes on Bluetooth is a pain in itself and makes you distracted. But the example I always use that I think is a good one, if you are driving along with a passenger in the car and up ahead, maybe it starts pouring down rain. One of those torrential rains you can barely see. Or there's a lot of flashing lights on at the front. What happens to the conversation in the car? The conversation in the car with the passenger with you usually gets quieter. It pauses while you as the driver can react to whatever scene is going on, because that driver next to you or that passenger next to you sees the risk going on in front of you. If you're on Bluetooth, hands-free, even though your hands are on the wheel, your eyes are ahead, that person doesn't see the risk. So they're more likely to keep that conversation and try to engage you, question why you're not answering if you're getting quiet. So there are risks involved. Is it better than holding the phone to your ear so hands off the wheel? Yes, it's better. But again, hands-free is not risk-free. I reckon the big thing I have is, you know, I grew up in a time where cell phones weren't a thing. If I wanted to make a call when I first learned how to drive, I had to pull over, find a quarter, put it in the payphone, and we were able to make it. Calls can wait and everything, and I know it's tough, and I know we like to use that time in the car, and I do a lot of driving for my position. We like to use that time of, hey, if I can get this conference call in, or if I can get this call to this customer or coworker in while I'm driving between places, that's good use of my time. It does engage your brain though.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for that. And I just have one quick question that might be relevant. So, you know, in 2020, we saw an increase in OVIs, and then could be pandemic related. But I do want to know, do you think it was also potentially related to at-home alcohol delivery or to-go beverages that were allowed during the pandemic?
I think all of that kind of plays into the same thing. I think you're on to something that it became more readily available because you could get it to go from the restaurants. I think I would be interested to really dig into those numbers because I think that's part of it. I think the mental health, the actual mental strain people were under being stay at home and all of that. And I think it all plays all hand in hand. And we aren't going to know for years what this pandemic has done to change our culture, to change things like this. So there's a lot that goes into it. And you bring that up, and I'll just share a funny aside that goes with that. My son is 18 years old, graduated high school last year. During the pandemic, he became a DoorDash driver. And being 18 years old, he was allowed to DoorDash the shots, the to-go alcohol, and everything like that, which was just mind-blowing to me. Like, they let this underage person drive in a car with the alcohol. So I think there's more issues than just the pandemic and DUIs with that take-home and to-go alcohol.
Thank you for that.
All right, well, I don't see any more questions that have come in. So we have on your screen now the QR code for the survey. I will also put a link to the survey for anyone having issues getting the code to pull up. Link to the survey is now in the chat box. Just a reminder that evaluations are required to receive continuing education. Again, for nursing, anyone receiving nursing, social work, or mental health counselor credits, you must provide your license number in the post-event evaluation survey. And a recording of this session will be available on the Prevention First website. And then I will say again, thank you to Prevention First, as not only someone that got to moderate a couple of sessions, but as someone that attended yesterday and today. Thank you both for the fantastic event. And of course, again, thank you to Mike for presenting this one for us.
Is there a way we can get my contact? There we go. Thank you. That's my email address. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Fantastic. Yeah, interesting statistics, especially about the one about intentionally running red lights.
Yeah.
I just, in my mind, that is something that was always unintentional, or, you know, a near miss, you know, but yeah, and the fact that it was actually higher, no pun intended, as people were engaging in marijuana use. So,
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic information. Thank you again, Mike.
Thank you.
And thank you again, Prevention First, for the event. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. And yeah, thank you, James, for helping out. Thank you, Mike, for the great presentation, and for all the attendees for, if you attended just this session or the past 2 days, thank you for your involvement. And once again, all the recordings and everything should be posted by the end of the week. And feel free to reach out to Mike for any other training requests. And thank you again. Have a good rest of your Wednesday.